Hello and welcome everyone. Great to have you all with us so far. We've got a few people joining us, which is great. Hope everyone's having a good day. Staying dry. The weather here, it's just started to rain a little bit where we are in Sydney, so I hope it's all nice where you are as well. Great to see people communicating in the chat. Feel free as we go through today's session to jump into the chat, say hello, and connect as best we can. Now, Delisha is joining us from YIPs, and we'll just get her connected in as best we can. And we'll do that soon. For today's session, we'll be covering off lots of things around digital marketing, and in particular, thinking about our personal brands and how we do that, how we build a personal brand, how we establish it, how we grow it, and we'll be thinking through a couple of different lenses as we do. In particular, we'll be working through some of the strategies or some of the tactics that I've applied for many years with many different companies and brokerages and businesses over the years. My background is about 20 years of digital marketing. Started a long time ago, way back in the early 2000s, working at a company called eBay, and then after that working at Fairfax across the jobs, cars, real estate websites, before setting up and running a very successful digital agency. So some deep sort of experience there that I hope to share with you today. Feel free as we go through to ask any questions and connect in as best we can. There's lots of angles that we can take on this and lots of questions that we might have and lots of sort of collective knowledge. So we're really open to hearing that. Ask your questions as we go. You can do that down the bottom of the slide of the webinar today. You can see that down the bottom, some open questions. So feel free to type those in, ask them in the chat. We'll get to them as best we can. If we can't get to them today, or there's other more specific questions that you have personally, feel free to reach out directly and connect with the team at Advisor or with myself here, and we'll do everything we can to support you on that. We'll be starting shortly with our session. I'm just waiting for Delisha to join us. I don't know if that's going to happen today. We'll see. I'm hopeful that she will. But we might just have a slight technical difficulty on that if that doesn't happen, and we'll be flying solo just with me, so you'll be cutting straight to that. But it's great to be running this in conjunction with YIPs. YIPs is a great organisation. It's got lots of members, of which you're all great members. We've got people on this webinar today from all over Australia and internationally, so it's fantastic to have such a community coming together, particularly with everything that's going on in the world. It's nice to see some engagement here and see some of these friendly faces and see people connecting as well. So it's good to be here as we do that. I imagine as we walk through some of these things that we're going to talk through today, some of them will be fairly obvious to you, and that may be because you've got vast experience in this area and in this arena, and you're thinking about it all the time, and that's okay. If some of it's really obvious to you and really easy and something that you're very familiar with, then maybe it's about thinking through what's one or two things that you could take away. What's something that you could build on your current strategy, or some new ideas that you might be able to adapt or adopt into your strategy. That's for the people that are very advanced. Some of us might be in the middle of the pack. We might be trying some of this or thinking about it or keen to explore and learning through those areas. And that's great too. There's some very practical things we'll step through today, which will help us to really understand how you can take some of those first steps and how you can keep doing what you're doing, because you're probably doing an okay job. It's about how could you sharpen that or refine that or change that. And some of us might have no experience or exposure to the things we're talking about today. And if that's the case, then it's great that you've decided to join and to learn and to start on that journey of exploration as we walk through these areas of digital marketing and building your personal brand. Now, as we think about those three sort of groups, the very experienced ends, the people in the middle, and the ones that are just starting out, there'll be something in today for everyone. And so hopefully that'll be something you'll get out of it. And feel free to share as we're going through something that you're thinking about or learning or might apply or have tried, or because we can learn together through this. Whilst I've got deep experience from my time running agencies and doing lots of digital marketing, and now in particular building Advisor, It's all about sharing together and doing that together. So we'll look to do that today. So without further hold up here, let's get into it. Hey, let me just open up our slides that we'll run through today and what we'll be covering off. So there's lots that we'll be covering off today. Again, something that you can think about here is there's two lenses through which I think you can apply what we're going to talk about today. One is through your corporate lens, and that's applying it to your business and in your business life and as you work professionally. And the other one is more personal, although still in that professional sense. I don't think it matters which lens you think about today, and there might be a blend between both of them, and that's fine. So we're happy to keep thinking about those areas as we go through. What are the things you could do personally, and what are the things you could apply to your business? Because particularly as you think about career and building a career and growing your career, use your roles that you have to really establish yourself. That's something I did many years ago when I started speaking at conferences in my early 20s when I was working at eBay about digital marketing, about what we were doing. I used the platform that I had, the role that I had, to establish myself and build credibility around digital marketing in the industry. It was helpful. I worked at eBay, one of the leading sort of digital companies in the early 2000s, and it was great to be able to build on that. So jumping into today, firstly, there are two polls that we're asking, and it'd be great if you could fill those in as we go through. The first one is just how confident do I feel about digital marketing? And when we think about those terms, it'd be great to get a sense around how confident you feel, just so I can help to tailor some of the content as we talk through. The second question is to think through about content, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. If you can start with that first one, how confident do I feel about digital marketing? We're seeing some of those results come through, which is great. It seems we've got some exposure there. And again, I imagine with the audience we'll have today, there'll be people that are full-time marketers. They think about this all the time. This is their job. Now, you'll know a lot of what we're talking about today, but hopefully there's a few things where you might be able to sharpen or tweak or change or adapt, or at least even just think about your strategy and how it fits in, or how you're doing different things. If you're doing some different things, we'd love to hear those as well. Okay, so some great feedback there. Thank you. That's really helpful. Let's get into our slides. I'll just change that so we can see it all. Okay, let's jump in. Hey, digital marketing. So there's 6 things that we'll be covering off today, and these broadly, if you can understand a little bit about each of these areas, then I think you've got a good grasp on digital marketing, and you'll be able to hold your own in those conversations about what you should be doing or where you should be going. Because somewhere this is a tactical question. What do we do today? How do we grow our audience today? How do we build it? And it's also a strategic question. How do we build our business or our career or our organization to get it to where we want to be? And these are the key channels that you want to think about, or the key areas you want to think about. And we'll be covering them off today in a bit of detail. So the first one is social media. There's lots of talk about social media, and there's lots of channels that come out. And we'll be exploring where you should be and how to think through where you should be. You could be everywhere. That's an option. It could take up a lot of time to do that. Secondly, we'll touch on SEO and SEM. Some of these are jargon words, but SEO is search engine optimization. That's what that means. And that's about how do you get your content, or how do you get yourself to rank in Google when people are searching for you without having to pay. That's basically what SEO is. SEM is search engine marketing, and traditionally stands for the paid advertising placements within Google that'll sit around the top and down the bottom of the page. Again, tied to keywords and what people are looking for. It's their advertising platform that really drives their whole business. Thirdly, we'll spend a bit of time looking at customer reviews. There's been a big shift over the last few years in customer reviews, moving from product-centric customer reviews more into services and reviewing services and service providers. And in particular, we see customers looking for that in referral businesses, and we'll talk about that through our experience we've seen with Advisor and the value of reviews for brokers on Advisor. Fourthly, we'll spend a bit of time looking at content and working through what types of content to think through and how to approach content. Content can be a very broad topic, and it can be tricky to know where to start, but we've got some really simple ways to help you structure and think about where you might start. Fifthly, email marketing. Email is a A very effective business tool. Everyone has email, they check it all the time, they open it. It can also be a great tool personally to build your personal brand. And we'll talk about that, some strategies around how you might be able to create updates or share insight or give some overviews around what's going on in your life and your career and where you're up to with people that count. Again, building personal brand and thinking about how you position yourself. And finally, we'll touch on personal brand. Now, making sure that your professional profiles can be found is just business critical these days, and some tips and tricks around how to make yourself really shine in that area. But personal brand, you'll notice, comes at the end of this. And the reason for that is because the personal branding part really, I think, is built on all the ones before. If you get all those other parts right, then your personal brand is kind of the output or the outcome of it. And whilst that may be the goal, if you do the hard work in the other areas, then you end up with your personal brand. So we'll talk through that as well. Okay. Again, anytime as we go through this presentation, feel free to ask questions in the chat, or feel free to ask questions more formally in the question capability below, and you'll see that. Delisha, are the other 5 items in a particular order? Yeah, good question. I think you're talking about, this is the order we'll talk through them today. I think we'll spend most of our time focused on content, really, because I think having a strong position on content really helps you to dominate in the other areas. The others are the delivery mechanisms to some degree. And so it's about what are you actually pushing through those channels that are helping you to engage and connect. Okay, so social media. How do you think about social media? There's a lot going on in this space, isn't there? There's a heck of a lot of platforms. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of people competing for attention, your customer's attention. And your customer in this sense, in a corporate sense, maybe that client that you're trying to land, or it might be for your professional career, it might be those people that you want to reach and build awareness with. There's a lot of people competing for their attention. So a couple of things to think about, firstly, is really who is your audience? And if you can sit there and grab a pen and paper if you've got it, and we can start doing some of this work as we're going through. All these slides, by the way, will be shared afterwards. You can get a copy of that. If you want to talk further, feel free to reach out to the team at any stage. But all of this material will be provided. But if you grab a pen and paper, you might be able to do some work on the way through and start to build a bit of this plan or structure as we work through. Key question to ask is, who is your audience? When I think about businesses, I think that's a critical question that can get overlooked. Often we spend time thinking about our product and what we do, but we might not be able to think too much about who our customer is or how they think about things. There are lots of social channels as we're thinking about here. And so where are they? Where are your audience? We know Facebook has a very big audience, but are people on Facebook always looking for business things? I'd say probably not. But I think there's a likelihood that you can still influence them through there and reach them. When we think about careers and professional development, it's LinkedIn, right? You've got to be on LinkedIn, particularly for that professional exposure and brand and presence and profile. Twitter is an interesting one. And these are probably all the traditional social media channels, really, right? There's new ones coming about all the time. And there's questions to ask and think through around TikTok and Instagram and lots of places that you could think about being. The question to ask is, where is your audience and what are they expecting through that channel? Are they looking to engage with a business like yours at that point in time? And it may be that you just need to think of creative ways to do it. There might be angles that you can think through. One thing I'd encourage you to do is to find some research tools and levels of engagement and to look at these different platforms and figure out who the audience is. What types of people are on there and how can you reach them? Often through these tools, or through these channels, they provide tools in their paid media capabilities that enable you to figure out more about the audience. And the reason for that is they want you to spend more on the marketing dollars, and so they give you some of the tools. But a bit of a cheeky way you can do it, you can actually set up some of those campaigns or pretend to start those campaigns and get access to the tools. So you can use some of those research tools to look at those levels of engagements. The other thing to think through is to have a look at your network and work out who's in there and who isn't, and who would you like to be in there, and find out where you can join them. Okay, moving on, thinking about SEO and SEM. So SEO, again, search engine optimization. And that's really, how do we rank in Google for the keywords that we want to rank for? Now, there are very competitive keywords that are very popular, and yet they're very broad often. An example of that, in this case, would be insurance. When someone's searching for insurance, in the customer's mind, they might know exactly what they're meaning when they search for that. But there's lots of options that they could be looking for, right? They could be looking to buy direct. They could be looking for car insurance, home and contents. They could be looking to make a claim. Lots of things. It's often called a head term because it's very broad and gets a lot of volume, but can be a little bit vague. And so a couple of things when you're thinking through paid search campaigns, and again, touching on those tools that you might want to use, is to have a look at the Google AdWords campaigns and to find out what volume of searches are happening for the different keywords. There's a Google keyword tool that you can use. It's called the Google keyword tool. And you can type in a keyword and get some sense around how competitive or how much volume there is of activity around those terms. That can be a really useful tool because often we can be tempted to talk about things in the way that we talk about them internally, but it might be radically different than how our customers are talking about it. And so we can do the market research, use these tools to understand some of those areas, and then start thinking about our content. And we'll talk about that later. The second thing to think through here is Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a free analytics software package being bought by Google. It was a company bought by Google probably 15 or 20 years ago. It's a long time now. It's an incredibly powerful tool that can enable you to see lots of things. You can see where your referral traffic is coming from, what keywords people are searching for you, how long they spend on your site, what pages they go to, where they interact with you, and the likes. It's a very powerful tool. If you have a marketing team, they should be using an analytics tool and ask them for a report or an insight or some way to access some of that so you can see what's going on. At a very minimum, you want to be thinking about how you rank for your brand terms. That's a very minimum area. To build out from that is to think through how you rank for some of those keywords that are related to your product, but don't mention your brand. Are you competitive in that space? Do you attract audience who don't know about you specifically, but are looking for the problem or the product that you have and looking for the problem that they have to be solved? Can you do that? Now, SEO is predominantly broken up into a couple of key areas. If you want to do well in Google, you need to think about a few key things. One, you need to think about your on-site SEO. That's like your website or the things that you control exactly. With your website, you want it to be fast, you want it to have really great specific content, and you want that content to be presented well. And by presented well, I mean using the title tags, using the header tags, using some of those structural things. And there are lots of checklists out there around how to do on-site SEO. And if you want to talk further about that, I can help you, or we can talk about that and provide some more guidance. Again, 20 years of experience doing that for lots of big companies. And so we can help out there. Secondly, with SEO though, if you just have a great website and great sort of internal content, that's only half the job, because SEO and ranking well in Google is really about how other people view you and do other people reference you and connect with you. And that's called off-site SEO. So again, how can you get reputable sites linking back to your website? That can be really tricky when it comes to corporate propositions, because you've got to think, what's the reason for these sites to do it? Why would they do it? Why would they want that in front of their audience? What's the reason? And so again, it can be about how do you create and craft really unique, relevant content that can help people to find what they're looking for. So someone else is wanting to talk about you. That's a great scenario. And so think about how you can flip some of the things that you might be trying to create to make it really useful that other people would want to share. Make them the hero with your content, and you'll win in the long run. One of the great things about Advisor, the platform we've built, so with the fastest growing website in the country for small businesses looking for an insurance broker, is that brokers can post content on Advisor. And we also link back to your website. So if you're looking for those links back to your website, then you can certainly do that through Advisor. It's a really easy way to do that. In addition, we take content from third parties that are related and relevant for our audience and for the customers that are coming through, and we'll link back to you as well. So there's some options there if you're thinking through that space. The third thing we're going to talk about is customer reviews. Customer reviews are pretty important these days. If you think about your own experience and you think about your own approach to how you buy products or how you find a hotel room or how you choose a restaurant, it's all about the customer reviews. Businesses literally are living and dying by their customer reviews. And so it's incredibly important to think about this. It can be the main influence that customers are looking for when they're deciding who to work with and who to choose. It can make a massive difference. And so as you think about your career, it'd be great to hear about how you're doing that and how you're starting to cultivate some of those. You can get reviews in different ways, and we'll talk about some of that. One thing I'd encourage you to think about is think about that at a company level and at an individual level. And sometimes if you do it at an individual level, you'll influence the company as well. When we look at the different channels that are open for reviews, or the different places that can take reviews, it's very interesting to look at what's possible. With LinkedIn, for example, you can leave a referral for someone or a review of an individual effectively. But less so with a company. You can't really review a company on LinkedIn. Google is the reverse of that to some degree. So you can't leave a review on an individual on Google, but you can review a company through their Google My Business and some integrations there. On Advisor, you can do all of them. You can leave a review at an individual level, a company level, or across an article that someone's posted. And then there are review-specific products and platforms out there. Two of the most popular would be Trustpilot and Reviews.io. Both of these focus on the company level rather than the individual. And I actually think the individual one's really important, and we'll talk about that later when it comes to personal brand. But people do business with people, and so it's your reputation, and it's how you can build that. Great question we've just had come in from Dalisha about can you control your reviews on Google? It's a really interesting one. At a company level, someone in your company should be looking after your Google My Business profile. A lot of them still aren't even engaged with or claimed or activated, and so you don't really have a way to respond. You can't necessarily take down Google reviews. You can question them. You can ask Google to look into them, and they'll look into them and interrogate them to see how valid they are. But you can't necessarily take them down. And there's a few court cases, I think, working through at the moment on that. What you can do, and the most important thing to do, is to reply. If you're not replying, then it's radio silence. And that's pretty business critical and limiting if you think about a customer finding you, reading a bad review, and seeing no response. Then they're not necessarily going to give the reviewer the benefit of the doubt, but they're certainly going to be influenced by it. Great question. Okay, so on reviews. Interestingly, NEBA have their Find a Broker platform. There's no way to leave reviews there. It's more sort of functional on the data that's possible. And that's probably a missed opportunity. Okay, we've got some blog posts on our site. There's lots of content that we post talking about digital marketing, particularly with an insurance lens and slant on it, that you can find on our website. We post it all on LinkedIn. We share it through those channels as well. But here's one on 7 ways to get fantastic customer reviews that you can read later. Just how to start thinking that through. Reviews are really important because Google are valuing them as important, and they make them important because customers see them as important. Here's a screenshot you can see just of a search result of an insurance broker on the Advisor platform. Our site is set up in such a way that the star ratings, the ratings and reviews that get left on the Advisor platform are built in a way that Google can digest them and show them to customers. You can see here of the 4 or 5 line items that are showing up for this search result, one whole line item is dedicated to customer reviews and to feedback. If Google are doing that, then that tells you that it's pretty important to the customer. It tells you it's pretty important to think about now if you want to be building a business. So that's one of the reasons we've kind of built that structurally into the platform. The other thing we see is actually on the Advisor platform, customers or brokers, insurance brokers with customer reviews get seen up to 25 times more than brokers without reviews. Now that kind of makes total sense, right? If you're a customer, you come through and you go, who am I going to go with? Am I going to go with the person who's got 5 stars or the one that doesn't? it's a natural, really quick filter that people are using and starting to make. And we see it in the data. We see it where people go. And that's been pretty amazing to see, to be honest. I didn't think it would be quite that big, the difference, but customers vote with their feet. And so we see that. So moving on from customer reviews, we're going to spend a bit of time now talking about content. I think content is really important because that's the hard bit to do. And we're going to think about content and walk through some different strategies or ways to start or ways to approach it. And hopefully there's some great ideas in here that you can take and run with and start implementing. It's interesting to think through some of those phrases that say, if we just, it's not necessarily about knowing more, it's about doing more often. We have so much knowledge or access to knowledge and information, and so that's not often our limiting factor. Our limiting factor is our ability to apply it and to actually do something with it. And so today I'd encourage you, as we work through particularly this part, to think, what's one or two things you could actually do? What's something you could start? What's a process that you could apply? That would be a great outcome. So again, thinking through content, there's two sort of key things to think about. It's all about your audience. Sometimes we're desperate to tell our stories our way, but our customers just aren't interested in that. What you want to do is think about what are they really interested in and how can we talk about that and connect in. So really try and flip that and interrogate whenever you're creating content to think, is this actually something that would benefit a customer? Will they benefit from it? Secondly, there's low-hanging fruit all over the place. There's easy things that you can do to start. And we'll step through some of those as we go here today. But there's always low-hanging fruit. And so it can feel daunting. I've got to do all this stuff. I'm busy. I've got too much on anyway. How do I start? But there's always places you can start. So please, let me encourage you, just start. So starting is easy and hard, right? I've just said to start, but it's easy and hard. Here's a little slide that might be useful to you. Just start jotting down some ideas. What could be some things that you could talk about? What could be some things that your customers might be interested in? What are the questions that your customers ask you all the time? There's probably ones that come up from time to time, over and over, and you'll know them. And so start capturing those. Start thinking about a little snappy title and start thinking about your key message. Now, if you spent 5 minutes a day thinking through this, you'd be well on your way to creating a pretty good piece of content that would help you to get going. And something's way better than nothing. So start. If I can take anything away from today, just start. And we can help out on that as needed as well. Sometimes it can be tricky to know how to start, right? As I said, here's a tool called answerthepublic.com. It's a website. What you can do with this website is you type in a keyword, and that's like the topic or the area that you want to talk through and talk about. It returns a whole heap of variables around there, around the types of questions that people are asking, the comments, the statements, the way that that keyword is used. It's a great resource if you want to think about creating good content, because you can find that exact thing. An example would be here, you put in insurance and you come up with like, what is cyber insurance, or what does an insurance broker actually do? They're the questions that people have. So let's start creating content that really answers those questions. So how do you write a blog post? How do you actually start? We've given you some slides there to start thinking through and jotting down ideas and where to start. But really you want to find that topic and you can brainstorm, write them down, come up with things that you think are relevant to your customers, and then start thinking, how could you turn that topic into a story? Often we think that through internally here as we're developing content either for us or content for brokers. We start by saying, what are 3 sort of critical things that someone needs to know about this particular thing? And we might also then think through, what are 3 recent changes that have happened? And what's a story where someone's experienced this or had a problem because they didn't have this in place? And when we get some of those kind of areas together, we can take that topic and we can turn it into a story. Because one thing we all know is that stories are a lot more interesting than people telling us just pure information. Pure information can get a little bit dry from time to time. So make sure you're telling stories. Once you've got your topic or you've got your story drafted, make sure you draft it, review it, polish it, spend a little bit of time, get some feedback, be vulnerable, share it with people, because it doesn't need to be perfect to get out the door. Yes, it needs to be compliant, and you might need to work that through internally, but just keep getting something to the compliance person to review. Give them some stuff to do. Take the initiative and make that happen. The best way is to try and to see what happens, because you won't actually know what works with your audience or with the customers you're looking to reach until you really try. And so there is a bit of an experimentation that needs to be undertaken here. So let me encourage you to do that. And once you've done that, go around the circle again, try again. What could be the next thing we could do? What could be the next one? So what to focus on when you're doing that? Have a think about how you can include your content in your emails that you might be sharing out, your company ones, or any industry ones. I'm sure they're always looking for content and contributions, so you can do that. You can also share content again and again. So it's not just a once-off. You can repurpose it. Often that content's called evergreen, or it might be an update on some evergreen content. You can schedule lots of these content to go out at the right times. So if you know something's coming up in a couple of weeks, or there's a big conference, you could do your overview of that conference, and you could schedule that to happen, to go out in advance, right at the right time when people are thinking about that topic. For anyone who posts content on Advisor, and we get lots and lots, we've had hundreds and hundreds of articles posted on Advisor. Those articles then get shared through our social channels as well, giving you even more exposure. So when we're thinking about content and how much content to produce can be an interesting question. Here's a little diagram to help you think about it. At one end, you've got the multiple pieces a day, producing lots and lots and lots and lots of content. At the other end, you've got one piece a quarter or a year. Underneath, you can see which ones are more effective and which ones are less effective. And naturally, the ones that are more effective, yes, they do take more time. They take lots of time, but that's why they're more effective. It's tricky to think, I'm going to put something out once a quarter that's not going to be that deep or that rich or that insightful and expect it to have a great outcome. That's just not realistic these days. It's competitive space, and you need to actually produce really great content. And so here's a bit of a paradigm you can see. Some people say you should be posting multiple times a day. That feels like a heck of a lot of content to be producing. And somewhere there that can be too much. But the question is, where do you want to sit here? And where do you feel comfortable? And again, it's probably a testing and a trialing thing to see what really works for you, works for your audience, and what's sustainable for your business. There's been a real shift over the last while to video. 54% of customers say that they really want videos from brands and businesses that they love. And we're seeing that, right? The rise of the smartphone, everyone's got a big phone. We'll see 5G coming, which will increase this as well. So how does video play a role in what you're thinking about or how you're going to produce that? Particularly as a small or medium-sized business, that can be tricky and challenging. To get high-quality video, it can often feel too daunting. But again, there's got to be ways that you can start. And so let's have a think through what that could be. If we were to think through video and what could happen there, again, looking at this same sort of continuum, at one end, you've got the ability to share someone else's video. Now, that doesn't take much time. You've got to watch it. You've got to see it. You might be able to comment on it. It's pretty easy to do, really, as a starting point. But because it's easy, it might not be that effective for you or your business. It can be if you position yourself in a curation role and you become the source that helps people to see, when I need to know about this, I go here and they've got all the resources. That can be something that could be your strategy that you think through. Moving along, you could do 1-minute videos, very quickly talking about a topic for 1 minute. Record that. Doesn't necessarily need to be super hi-fi. It could be lo-fi in regards to the quality. People are comfortable with that, and that can happen. An example there is, Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister. She'll go straight onto her phone, record a video of herself in the car going to the airport, just giving a really quick update. What's happening for her? Where is she? What's she thinking? Now, politicians need to be careful of words. In insurance, we need to be careful of our words as well. So you need to be conscious of that. But that can be a tactic that could be applied. Updates or insights. Is there something that's come out recently that you could talk about? You could provide a review on, feedback on, critique. Onto the how do I's. That can be a really simple question to start your content. How do I do this? Thinking about your customers and their problems. How do I do this? What do I need to think about with this? Because that's what people are often searching for and looking for and trying to understand. So if you create the content that really matches against that, then you'll start to get some audience. Moving further along to the longer form lecture styles, things like what we're doing through today, that take more time and hopefully are more effective and beneficial to everyone who's listening. So why should we write a blog post? Or why should we do this? Isn't this a bit old, or how does it work? Or again, I want to encourage you to think this through your corporate lens. What should the company be talking about? And your personal lens, because it can be across both that you could apply this. What we really know is that people look for really great content. We do it all the time as users. And so if we're the business that's providing that experience, we naturally build trust with our audience. And once you build trust, then it's really easier to engage with people. And if you're looking to sell or grow your business, then that becomes easier too. Okay, we're seeing lots of stuff going on in the chats, which is great. So keep that going. There's some resources being shared. Anna-Marie from our team is on there as well. And there's lots of different people sharing some great resources, which is good. And Delisha, thanks for your contributions there as well. That's great. So as you think about content and how do you actually create content, that can be tricky. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. One, you can do it yourself. That can be time consuming. It might not feel comfortable, it might be outside of your skill set, but it's a good place to start, I think, to get some understanding. There are agencies, content marketers that you can look for that could help you. You could find a journalist, an industry journalist, the trade press, connect with them, see if they can help you. An industry expert, often a good way to do it can be to interview them or to connect with them and review their report or something they've provided. Or you can reach out to us. We've got a content team here as well, and we understand content marketing pretty well. And so we can help you on that as well. Be really clear on your brief, your expectations, your budget. If you want to do a really great job, it actually costs some money to do a really great job. And so you need to think about that as a business. Okay. So what could you actually write about? Well, here's just a slide. It's a very simple slide, really, but it gives you some frameworks or some content to start thinking about. In particular, you can think about local events, any areas where you specialize. If you can become the expert in just a couple of things, I think that's actually a really powerful position these days. In particular, when anyone can find you, if you're the expert about those few things, that's valuable. That's valuable to your customers and it's valuable to you. Talk about your passion projects. Not everything needs to be corporate and commercial and professional. Talk about things that are passionate and personal. That can be a useful ways too. Recent events, if there's been an event or a conference, think about reviewing those. If there's something going on in your business, you could write a review on that. If there's something in the industry, you could do that. New tech and trends as well. That's a great thing that people are often looking for. So that's something we can work through there. So that finishes our time on content. We spent most of our time on content. The reason why I wanted to do that is because the value of content is so powerful. It gives you the platform through which customers will engage and connect with you. It's your stories that you get to tell. And the ability to tell a really great story is so powerful these days for building trust and for building that personal brand and profile. Email marketing. If you're not doing email marketing in your business, then it's a really missed opportunity to re-engage with existing customers and hopefully reach those people that have some exposure to you, have given you the permission to connect with them and to connect with them more often. So there's lots you can do here. You can do this with past clients and potential clients. But again, it's about what would be useful for them. They don't necessarily want to hear everything about that's going on in your business. You might think it's super interesting. They might find it a little less interesting, I'm sorry to say. But what you want to think through is what's the frequency? Is there a cadence that makes sense in your business and is achievable and realistic and digestible? And that depends on the size and scale of your business. Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it weekly? Or whatever it might be. And again, major changes. If there's a major change going on in your business or your industry or your service line, be the leader that communicates around that and gives people the chance to ask questions or to understand. Hold those positions early. That can be really important. And one thing to think about here is even personally, if you're thinking about your career, there might be 10 or 20 people in your professional life that you think, these are the people I really want to sort of help shepherd my career as it grows. And I'm going to just connect with them once a month or once a quarter just to give them an update. And it could be really punchy, right? here's the 3 things that are happening in my career. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the challenges I'm facing, and here's what I'm thinking about. If you did that consistently over time, gee, those people would be impressed, I reckon, and would want to engage with you and connect through and help you. It's okay to ask for help and be vulnerable in those ways. People will do that, particularly if they think that's worthwhile and they think you're worthwhile, then they'll do that. So think about that as well. Often you get that when people change their jobs or move through, but there could be a bunch of people in your life that it could be worthwhile thinking that through. Finally, touching on personal brand, and your personal brand really does matter. People do business with people. We hear that, we know that, we feel that. In particular, with insurance, and when we think about insurance brokers, reputation is everything. And so that's really important to start working through what your personal brand is and what you want it to be. A good question to ask and to ponder is just, what do people think when they think about you? And I don't mean that in a negative sense or those kind of areas, but it might be, what are the things when they think about you professionally, what would their perception be? How would they analyze and review what you do and how you sort of interact? And how would they describe you to others? Can be another way to ask that question. Now, that can be a really important question to think about, because if you're honest with that and you're real with that, then you can start working out how to shape it and how to change it. Particularly as you're thinking about building a career or establishing a career, it can be really important to go, what do I want them to think? What's that first interaction? How do we engage with that? How do you really position yourself in that way? And how do you start owning that? Because that's pretty important to think through, particularly if you want to think about your career, because it comes to a time when you want to think about how you're accelerating that career. But the way to accelerate it is not to wait to that moment when the job opens up, but to be ready for it in advance, to be the one that becomes the natural choice, the obvious choice for the promotion or whatever it might be. Or when you go for new roles at another company, they've already heard so much good stuff about you through what you're doing or through how you're supporting organizations or contributing or whatever. But that's really something critical to think through. And if they know about you, you've got a big profile, it's pretty compelling. As someone who's hired lots and lots of people into digital marketing roles through my agency, we would have had hundreds of staff through there over the time that we ran that. It's very compelling to see those people that are really leading in this space, that think about it. That does sway. So let me encourage you to think through that. Now, we've spent lots of time working through these 6 sort of building blocks for our digital strategy, thinking through where you should be on social media and some of the channels. I'm seeing some of the questions coming through, and we'll get to those in the chat soon. But just to wrap up on our presentation, then I might just scroll through the questions quickly and get to those. We've talked about social media. There's new ones coming about all the time. Let me encourage you to try those. Try those out, see how they work, see which ones fit from an audience perspective. Again, think, where is your audience? Secondly, paid search and SEO. What do you want your team focusing on? Are they focusing in the right areas? Have you got the basic things in place of analytics? Do you understand that performance? Are you competitive in ways that you want to be? Are you using the tools to get the insights around where the customers are moving, the questions they're asking? Thirdly, customer reviews. If you're nervous about customer reviews, I understand that, but it's where the world's going, and it's what customers want, and it's what they're using. We see that through our data. We see it through how Google are integrating those. It's something to figure out how to get comfortable with and to know how to engage with it. One thing I didn't mention on the advisor platform, for example, with customers and customer reviews, we actually enable the insurance brokers to leave a review. They can reply to those reviews as well. So we get that interaction back and forth, which then builds the trust with the customers as well and other people that review those. Fourthly, content. We spent a lot of time thinking through content. The rise of video is increasing. That'll continue to happen. So think about how you can engage on video content and produce that. Potentially those 1-minute ones can be an easy place to start, or do some more formal things. You can produce lots of video, with a bit of effort and a bit of time, and there are good tools out there to help you do it. In particular, one tool for content, if you want to think about content and visual content, could be Canva. I'm not a graphic designer, but Canva is a very useful tool for creating lots of visual things pretty quickly and lots of templates that you can update and utilize as you want to produce stuff that looks pretty good relatively easily. So that's good. Fifthly, we talked about email marketing. Again, thinking through your company approach to that and think about how you do that personally as well. Do you reach out and connect with people in the right kind of way? And lastly, we touched briefly on personal branding. And I know that's really important. And that is really important, of course. If you get those other things right, if you're the voice of your company, if you're the one that's making great content, if you're the one that's on the video, if you're the one that's understanding how the customers are thinking about it, then you've basically gone a long way to building your personal brand in that professional sense. Then it's about how do you nurture and grow that into the areas that really make sense. So that's sort of it on the slides for now. There are some questions in the Q&A, so I'll jump into those now and just have a look through, and we'll get through some of those questions. Let me just go to those questions now down the bottom. All my details are here. We'll provide all of this afterwards. If anyone wants to connect further, always open to connecting in COVID-safe ways as appropriate these days. Okay, let me jump into some of these questions. There's lots there. Firstly, Jackson, is there an art to responding to bad feedback reviews? It doesn't look good when a business gets defensive in replying to negative reviews. I totally agree, Jackson. It doesn't look good when they get defensive, but what can be helpful can be to acknowledge the frustration of what's going on, to say, yes, we're hearing you. Thank you for the feedback. You always thank someone for feedback, even when it's hard. You thank them for them. If it's a functional thing, you can often provide some facts. You could say, we appreciate that didn't resolve in the way that you were looking for it to resolve. Our team reached out to you 5 times. We're happy to talk further if you'd like. These are the terms under which things were done. We've done everything we can. There can be some ways to do that. But not responding looks even worse, I think, because actually having some negative reviews and responding well can actually build trust. But it's not easy, and it does take some nous to nuance that well. Okay, next question from Delisha. Is there a perfect number of characters, words for a blog post? Look, I think it's about 400 seems to be a good number, 400. And if you think about breaking that up, you can break it up into a couple of, an opening summary and a conclusion, which take roughly about probably a quarter of that. You can have a few key dot points in there, no more than 3 sort of key points, and work out ways that you can use dot points, summaries, a graphic or an imagery or something. No one reads too much these days, so you need it to be visual. You need a good headline, and you need a way for people to scan the data quickly and move on. Okay, another question. What is more important for a company being perceived by customers? Strong marketing or a strong performing team? Look, I think it's probably not an either or that I'd respond to that one on. I'd say it's probably a both and. I think if you're just strong on marketing but you don't perform well, then people know that pretty quickly and it can feel a bit hollow. I think what you want to do is do a great job in your business and then make sure that you're telling people about it. Or better yet, that other customers are telling people about it for you and you're helping to amplify that. Perception is really important these days. It's always been important, but it's exceptionally important these days. So you need to be across both of those areas. Okay, can we get CPD points for this webinar? Look, we have a more formal webinar that runs for a little bit longer with a little bit more detail that has CPD points on it. I don't know if this one's registered for CPD points. What we'll do, Gaurav, is to check whether that's possible, and we'll certainly keep everyone across that and see what's possible. Given the fact this is with YIPs through NEBA and the like, we should be able to make something happen, but let me come back to you on that, and I see there's some comments there as well. Okay, next question. Questions about videos and audience engagement. Say you are creating video content. Do you have any thoughts on what is critical in the opening, beginning of the video to keep viewers engaged and tuned in for the length of the video? How to lock in viewers so they stay tuned for the whole thing and not skim through the video? Great question here about how to create video to keep people locked in. I think the angle on that would be less about how do you lock them in and how do you keep creating value that keeps them sticky. It's a slight shift on how to think about it. But what you want to do is make sure that you're not trying to do too much in one video. If you think about some of those how-to videos, often they're very short, a couple of minutes max, and they're very focused. They're just trying to do one thing. That's really useful because the one person who's looking for that one thing finds it, and it's absolutely fantastic for them. It's exactly what they need. So I think if you're focused in the right kind of area, and not trying to do everything in each video or everything in each piece of content, then that's the right way to do it. And again, see what's working. All the analytics and all the tools that are available help you to see when people are dropping in and out of your content. And if everyone's dropping out of it, then maybe they're too long. If everyone's staying to the end, then maybe you could lengthen them a bit more or add a bit more. It just depends. I think it's about testing and learning what works for you. Some of the tools for working out SEO keywords and website analytics. Yeah, absolutely. So Google Keyword Tool. Google Keyword Tool is one that you want to think about. That can be a very simple tool. Answer the Public was another tool, answerthepublic.com, where you can type a keyword in and see what people are searching for. Around Google, there's lots. Google Search Console is sort of a very techie SEO piece, but your team should be across that. Google Search Console and Google Analytics is sort of the industry standard, really, in analytics. It's easy, it's free, it provides lots of insights, so you should be across that. Okay, next question. Question about videos and audience engagement. Say you're creating video content. Do you have any thoughts on what is critical in the opening and beginning? Oh, we've answered that one, haven't we? Yep, we've answered that one. That's fine. Delisha, have you seen the impact of acquiring customers via social media marketing for brokers that have worked with Advisor? Yeah, look, I think to give you some stats on Advisor and our growth, last year we had 65,000 people came to the Advisor website, and we generated about 10,500 lead events. That's people clicking through to a broker's website, people phoning them, so clicking on the phone number and connecting through, or people sending a lead inquiry, an email inquiry effectively through. So that's been a very effective strategy for us as one of the sort of two key customer acquisition strategies into Advisor. So yeah, we are certainly building good content for people for brokers and with brokers and helping to share that. I'll give you an example. A recent piece of content we had was around loss of rent and understanding the terminology between loss of rent and rent default. It's a very specific question, right? And you've got to be right in that space to be trying to understand it if you're going to find that. But people that found that content, and thousands of people found it, came through to Advisor, connected with that broker, and engaged, because that broker was standing there saying, here's exactly what that difference, and being that thought leader. We then share that via social. We share lots of things via social, and it amplifies that content. Jackson, in terms of professional branding, what's the balance on giving your personal opinions on platforms such as LinkedIn's, particularly on political issues? That's a very interesting question, Jackson. I think it's look, I think that's personal choice, really. I think what you want to do is call that out. So if you often in your like personal description, you could say opinions are personal, or opinions are private, or opinions don't reflect the organization, and that can be a way just to put a bit of a caveat over there so that your personal opinions and your corporate ones are separated. And that can be something that can happen. I think it's about there's lots of important issues that are going on in the world at the moment, and you've got to stand for things, right, that matter. And I think there's a need for leadership in those areas. And so, yeah, I'd encourage you, don't be afraid to step forward with your opinions, but be open to the fact that other people might have different opinions, and be okay to understand those. I think some of those famous sort of books from years ago, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is seek first to understand rather than looking to be understood. So there could be some wisdom in that. And the last sort of open question we have here, there's lots more coming through here. How relevant is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., to a personal branding versus LinkedIn? Delisha, great question. Look, I think it comes down to the industry that you're in can be a big factor. Some industries are more prevalent and prominent in different areas, and so you want to think through those. LinkedIn is the massive one for personal branding in a professional sense, in a corporate sense. It's very important. Are there loads of small businesses necessarily on LinkedIn? Maybe, but probably less so, I would say, and they're probably less engaged than that sort of corporate professional person. I'd probably say Facebook's more personal, although that, you know, the lines on this blur all the time, and often you end up with your friends being Facebook friends and your work colleagues being on Facebook too, and all of that sort of blurs together. Twitter, I think. Look, I think Twitter's a really interesting one, and I think some people use it very effectively, and other people probably are just not engaged at all. And so again, it comes down to your audience, and is your audience there? If there are people that you want to connect with, or if there's professionals or people in your career path that you see that you want to connect, then certainly consider Twitter if they're on there. Find the channels where your audience are, or the people you want to connect with, and be there. Would be my encouragement. Okay, Laura, if you only have one product, either premium funding versus a broker who can discuss several products information, how can you work with ongoing marketing branding ideas? That's a good question, Laura. It can feel tricky, right? Because we only have one product, premium funding. I'd encourage you to just reframe that a little in your mind, maybe, and change that from being we only have one product and we need to talk about our product to think, who can our product actually serve, and what is the benefit that we provide to those customers? And so if you think about premium funding can free up cash flow for small businesses or medium-sized businesses. Who are the CFOs out there who are thinking about cash flow and insurance and responsible for those areas? And can you connect with them and solve their problem, which is all about cash flow? So it could be an angle to flip it and say, let's talk about cash flow in these types of businesses or these examples as a way to do that. And that would help you to do that, to just change that a little so that you are thinking more about their business. What you could even do is actually structure content that's based around those. Cash flow in this type of business, or optimizing your cash in these businesses. Talk about the problems they have. Don't talk about your product, would be my encouragement. Delasha, okay. How are insurance-related terms, searches changing with the emergence of millennials? It's a good question. I think more work needs to be done. I probably need to do more work on that, to be honest. I think we're seeing a change. We're seeing a shift to those turn on, turn off insurance products that are getting brand and association. We're seeing a shift to millennials really looking for product that has social good or corporate value behind it. And so even today, Lemonade are busy announcing how much they've given away as their email update. Here's how much we've contributed, $1.2 million to all these different organizations. That's a great marketing message. It's a great product message. It's a great business message. And so the question is, what are millennials searching for in regards to insurance? Are they looking for insurance with social good? That could be an angle or a position that could be changing. But I probably need to do more digging into the research there. The interesting dynamic here to think through is also the tension between what people say they want and what they end up buying. And so often you need to talk about what they say they want, but deliver what they're buying as well. And price can be a key driver here. So we see that. Are we seeing people turning away from insurance in regards to just owning less things, less cars owned by millennials, those kind of things? Possibly as well. So that could be skewing that. Okay, one more question from Nish. With LinkedIn as an example, is there adding too much content that might cause your personal branding to become annoying? Absolutely. It's a great question. Absolutely. I think it's about being relevant to your audience, seeing what's working. If we're always broadcasting, that can be a really interesting one. if we're curating, bringing together other ideas and providing some analysis on it, that can be a simpler way to still be connecting, but not be like, oh, here they go again with that same thing. So that can be something. The counter to it is, if you're not saying anything, then that's probably a problem. If you're not contributing enough, that's a problem. So I'd encourage you to keep stepping forward. But yeah, too much content can be a problem. A very simple way can be to ask people a question. So if you put up an article or you're sharing someone else's, you can say, here's my thoughts. What do you think? People love to share their opinions, and actually getting people to engage on content and provide their opinions and feedback, that actually helps your content and your posts to get more exposure. It's part of the algorithm, right? Because it drives engagement. So if you understand the algorithms and you can play to them, then you can increase your engagement as well. So hopefully that answers that one for you. Okay. Dilasha, I'm so sorry that we couldn't have you here co-hosting with me face-to-face. Apologies for that. That's all my fault. We'll talk about that and resolve that for later. But that looks like the end of our questions today. It's been really good to connect with everyone. All of the slides, as I said, will be available afterwards. Feel free to reach out at any stage if you're looking to talk further. Any feedback, we're totally open to that as well. So we'd love to get all your feedback, things that you like, things that you didn't like, things that were boring or things that were interesting. Again, it's great to be a part of this industry, in the insurance industry. If you're a broker, reach out in particular. We'd love to help you with Advisor and talk through what could work for you and help you optimize your exposure there and just share some of that. So look, it's been really great, everyone, with everything that's going on in the world. I really appreciate the time and the dedication for people to carve out this time on a Friday. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe wherever you are. Particularly all our people in Victoria. We're feeling for you guys. All of Australia's rallying with you, and we're here for you. So with the flight to digital, this kind of stuff's really important to get right for your businesses, for your careers. And if I can help in any way, feel free to reach out. Love to support you as best we can. Thanks to YIPs for making this happen. It was really great to spend some time together. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.